Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Steck. I'm from Central European University Democracy Institute. We are now starting our second session of this webinar, which is on the Real Deal Protocol under the Real Deal Project. I hope you were able to join us this morning where you had an overview of the Real Deal Project, where things stand, what progress has been made, and what is still left to do. And now we are going to be moving towards our second session, which is from now till 4 p.m. And the moderator of the second session is Ingeborg Nistroy from RIFS in Potsdam. And without further ado, I'm going to be passing the floor to Inga to tell you about this session, session 2 of our pre-summit meeting. Inga?
Yeah, thank you very much, Stephen, and welcome everybody to this afternoon. I apologize, my voice is a bit odd. I'm sick, and so also bear with me if I have some blackouts or something. I'm pulling my last energy together to conduct you here. The first session in the morning, we gave an overview about the purposes and activities and achievements so far of our project, Real Deal, where roughly we are standing in the middle of conducting empirical test cases with citizen stakeholder participation deliberation. And we are at the verge to start our end product, which will be what we call protocol, a set of recommendations, guidelines, to this end, to combine for citizen deliberation for the European Green Deal. So that's our key nexus. And that is also what we are doing in this session too. We are here outward oriented in that we want to hear from, we want to get ourselves an update on the policy developments on the European Green Deal, on the democracy policies and activities, most notably the EU citizen panels, the European Climate Pact, and also hear from other initiatives. And from these panelists and from all you, we want to get then also input. We want to sound with everybody to get input for the work of our protocol, where we will have tomorrow a kind of a workshop session with the sleeves more rolled up, which will be organized by Esther, who is also there. With this, I would like to present you our superb panel. We have really a set of top actors in this arena in the EU. We will start off with Clara Dassonville with Solidar. She gives an overview on this Green Deal policies, as I said, with a focus on just transition. And possibly then also my colleague, they are also partner of the Green Deal project, Solidar, as is EEB. And my colleague Jeffrey might come in with an environmental side if there is something to add. Then we have Getan Rikaniul. She is not yet, she will join in a few minutes. She is with the European Commission, and they're the secretariat of the Conference on the Future of Europe, which is terminated, but which was followed up by these 3 EU citizen panels. And we want to get an update on that, how any experiences, lessons learned, do's and don'ts, and how this will go on, and what we can take from these lessons for us. Then we have Yves Mathieu is already here. Hello, Yves, with the Mission Publique, which is practitioner organizing. So Yves is probably the one who has in this room for sure, who has the widest, longest, and most abundant experience with conducting citizen deliberation in all kinds. And he, and Mission Publique, was also heavily involved in the Conference on the Future of Europe and the EU Citizen Panel. So he could both reflect on what we hear from the Commission and also on the nexus Green Deal / planetary boundaries and democracies, because I know that's very much at the heart of Yves' interest. So we will have two, I forgot to say, I plan to have 2 rounds. So what I just presented was the first round. and then having Q&As, and then a second, possibly a break, but as time flies, we probably will not make that, we'll see. And then we have a second round with Ulrike Liebert. I also forgot to say, Eve is also a member of our advisory board, as is Ulrike Liebert with the European University Institute. And she will also present their current initiative for what they call Democratic Odyssey, which is also for deliberative. It's actually about institutionalizing an EU citizen panel. So the issue of institutionalizing, we will discuss in this panel. The Commission has probably ideas how they see this for themselves, and then also from the EUI. And there we will also hear about the links between the Real Deal activities and plans and the Democratic Odyssey, both in the multi-level perspective and in the knowledge bases. And the issue knowledge base is then where we get major input from Angela, who is with the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, and there is running the Competence Center on Participatory and Deliberative Democracy, with all kinds of one-stop shop knowledge assembled there, and activities and training. So we want to get a bit a presentation on that, and where are the possibilities to join with others or to link all these endeavors and ambitions. And last but not least, we will finish with Laurence Graf. She is with the European Commission DG Climate and was responsible for what I already mentioned, the European Climate Pact, which is the participatory element in the climate part of the European Green Deal. There have also been a plethora, quite many activities, and now we want to hear what is experience with this and what is planned. Now, without much ado, I give the floor to Clara, please.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Inge, for presenting the panel and for introducing myself. Can everybody see my screen, first of all? Yes, I assume?
I think so, yeah.
But it's the last slide. Let's roll it back to the first one because we're starting. So good afternoon, everyone. It's very nice to be here today at the Real Deal Pre-Summit. Thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Clara Dassonville, and I am Just Transition Policy Officer here at Solidar, where I work on advancing climate action together with social justice at the European level. And for those that don't know, I'm part of Solidar. It's a network of more than 50 organizations all around the globe that work on social justice. And we work on files related to migration, education, social affairs, but also international cooperation. And on top of that, Solidar is also running an alliance at the European level called the European Alliance for Just Transition, where we mobilize our members in order to advocate for a just transition towards EU policymakers. So it's a pleasure here to be here with you today in order to talk to you about the European Green Deal, analyze what are the main policy developments that happened since its launch in 2019. Then, starting from that, I will introduce you to the concept of just transition, how it has evolved around the years, what do we mean by just transition at Solidar, before analyzing the European Green Deal from a social perspective and giving you a few policy recommendations in light of the very heated European elections that we're going to witness next year. So without further ado, having said that, let's start with the European Green Deal. It was set up in 2019 as the continent's strategy to achieve climate neutrality. That climate neutrality, this main goal, was enshrined through the European Climate Law. The goal, this European Green Deal acts as the main economic strategy and development strategy of the EU for the next years, and that's why it was set as the cornerstone of the European Commission. It was followed by the Fit for 55 package, which is a wide range of legislative proposals that concerned almost every policy area, ranging from climate policy to environmental policies. To give you a few examples, we have the EU Forest Strategy, the Effort Sharing Regulation, but we also have the Renewable Energy Directive, the Energy Taxation Directive, the Social Climate Fund, etc. So all of this Fit for 55 package was then complemented by the Repower EU strategy that was launched last year in light of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And then we also witnessed other policy developments, such as the Green Deal Industrial Plan. And this was mainly concerning the Net Zero Industry Act and the Critical Raw Materials Act in order to increase the continent's resilience and competitivity in light of the geo-economic shocks. So this is the Green Deal in an extremely at light speed. But now, before analyzing what do we think of the European Green Deal, let me walk you through the concept of just transition. It started off in 1990s. It actually started in the US. It was the trade unions that introduced this concept because they were defending the workers in fossil fuel industries that were losing their jobs because of the green transition. And so from then, it was progressively enshrined into international law and in international summits. For instance, in the Paris Agreement in 2015, and then it was operationalized by the International Labour Organization through its guidelines on how to achieve this just transition. Then it appeared for the first time at the European Union in 2019 within the European Green Deal, because there was this mention in the whole package that said that the green transition should leave no one behind. What followed was in 2020 the Council recommendation that provided guidelines for member states on how to implement this just transition. And it was about having fair taxation systems, taking care of workers that were seeing their jobs replaced, but also it was linked to social protection, it was linked to education system, it was guidelines on how to operationalize this just transition. Now, we've seen a window of opportunity opening for just transition and climate policy with the COVID and then the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But now we see with the latest policy developments related to geoeconomic shocks and the security concerns rising in Europe, we're seeing that this window is slowly closing and that it's getting more and more difficult to advance climate policy together with social justice. So now that I've briefly introduced you to the concept of just transition, what does it mean in the European Green Deal? We have a few policy instruments that concern a just transition, but let me be clear first. For Solidar, this is not enough because these policies represent only fragmented add-ons to already existing climate policy. They do not tackle the structural roots of the problems that are linked to social inequalities and carbon inequalities. But what are these policies? First, we have the just transition mechanism, which is a mechanism set up at the European level in order to help regions to transition to sustainable energy and sustainable business models. We also have the Social Climate Fund. Here, member states can use the revenues generated from the emission trading system in order to invest in socially just energy measures, such as renovations to fight energy poverty. We also have the Council recommendation that I briefly detailed before, and here it's mostly about helping member states to implement robust welfare states in order to protect their population in the green transition. But what we're seeing is that, and it's thanks to the latest Eurobarometer, is that most EU citizens agree with the green transition and are favorable to it, but also most of them fear that the costs of the green transition will weigh on the most vulnerable. That's why at Solidar we believe that the green transition needs social policy or it cannot be. So what do we view as just transition within Solidar? We see it as a holistic framework that is the main tool to achieve a sustainable and fair society for all. And this is linked to every single aspect of our lives. Very briefly, it's linked to inequalities because it's about alleviating poverty, such as energy poverty. But it's also linked to education and work. It's about being educated in green skills so we can land good and decent jobs. It's also about the economy. It's about having robust socio-ecological welfare state and sustainable business models. It's also obviously linked to having access to clean and affordable energy. It's also obviously linked the topic that we are discussing here today to democracy. It's about involving citizens in the process and giving them ownership and empowerment. But it's also about making sure that everybody can live in a healthy environment, that the global south does not have to pay the price for Europe's transition, and about making sure that digitalization helps the green transition and bridges the digital divide and do not perpetuate existing inequalities. So we have this holistic vision for a just transition that we try to push forward at the European level. But what steps in the way of achieving a just transition? We're seeing an increasing polarization of climate issues, for instance, through the nature restoration law, where we had the right and the far right parties at the European Parliament that tried to block the law. And here we started seeing the consensus for climate action started to crumble under social considerations. Then the next hurdle would be the different visions that we have of the green transitions. And this is going to be a key issue in the next European elections, because some actors view the green transition as a business opportunity. So it's the opportunity to become competitive, but to stick with the same usual economic models. Then other actors see the just transition and the green transition as something that concerns only workers' rights and that should be achieved through social dialogue and collective bargaining. This is, for instance, the definition of the ILO. But then we have many more visions of just transition, such as one that is state-oriented, meaning that a just transition needs to have strong socio-ecological welfare states. And then we have one that is more holistic and that concerns every single part of society, which is the one that we adopt at Solidar. And the last hurdle that we see stepping in the way of achieving a just transition is the fact that there is no EU comprehensive framework for a just transition, which means that there's no policy coherence when it comes to implementing all the different policy areas. What do we make out of this at Solidar? Here are key demands. We want a coherent and holistic EU just transition policy framework in order to coordinate all of these different policies, and this should be done at the European level and then be broken down at the member state level. We also need to promote a sustainable economy that guarantees the well-being of all, of course, within planetary boundaries. Then, obviously, we have to redistribute the benefits of the green transition through socio-ecological welfare states, and that includes a fair taxation model. Then we also need to ensure the access of fundamental rights and strengthen the European social model. And this means reducing socioeconomic inequalities and all forms of discrimination. It has to be made very clear that climate action can tackle inequality and poverty, and that both go hand in hand and are not opposite. Then we need to ensure decent and sustainable jobs. And for that, we need to strengthen social dialogue and collective bargainings and protect workers' rights. And this also means investing in education and training to make sure that everybody can have access to green skills and therefore land decent jobs. We need also to ensure civil and social dialogue because they are the essential components of a just transition plans at every level. And finally, we also need to achieve a global just transition that is based on solidarity and justice. And this means paying attention to the external dimension of EU climate and social policy. These are, in a nutshell, what we advocate for. And now let me show you how it can work in practice. In Spain, we have the example of the Just Transition strategy that was achieved in 2019, where there were sectoral agreements between trade union, governments, and businesses in order to close down fossil fuel facilities such as coal plants and to either reskill the workers within the same company or within different companies, or to put in place early retirement schemes for workers that were considered too old and that didn't want to work anymore. Another example of a just transition for education would be the one of the eco schools that are taking place in Croatia, where they have a board that is specifically dedicated to environmental and sustainable studies, and where students have a say in elaborating the curriculum. So I hope this was a clear picture of where do we stand in the European Green Deal, what are the hurdles on the way when it comes to the next European elections, especially when it comes to just transition. And if you're curious and if you have more questions, I'll be very happy to answer. If you want to know more about Solidar or about the Alliance, I'll be happy to drop my details in the chat. Thank you so much.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Clara. I would have more questions in the direction of what you are planning to do in light of the next European election. But I think this will deviate us a bit. For now, Jeff, do you have something to add from the environmental side, particularly, and or what Real Deal has done, what the Civil Society Forum has done as work on the European Green? Maybe just some few highlights in addition.
Yeah, thank you very much, Inge. So with the Civil Society Forum, we've been bringing lots of NGOs' expertise together and really tapping into the shared knowledge which is there through a series of meetings. And we had this year in June an in-person meeting where we brought together around 60 different organizations to basically discuss on our vision on the future of the European Green Deal. And so the result of these discussions came out 1 week ago with a short policy brief. And perhaps our hosts can maybe paste the link in the chat for the participants if they want to have a look at that. It was really based on the outputs from civil society organizations in different working groups. So we looked at, and I think Clara has given an absolutely brilliant overview of the intersection between the social dimension and the environmental dimension, but we have a section on that in the policy brief. We discuss democratizing the Green Deal and citizens forums and how we can better institutionalize deliberative democracy in line with the goals of the Real Deal. Also a global Green Deal. So how can we basically reduce the negative spillover effects that we see from Europe's policies on the global south, and then looking at the environmental dimension, which I'll go into a few brief ideas of what civil society organizations recommend there. And of course, we also discuss a gender-just well-being economy. So from the perspective of the environmental side, and of course, as EB, that's our raison d'etre. We're the largest European network of environmental citizens organizations in Europe. So really for that little section, maybe I can share what a few of the key questions and real demands that came up if the Commission were to propose future legislative initiatives and to move beyond and strengthen the existing Green Deal initiatives. So the first one is on transforming our food system. So really the agricultural system and trying to reshape the food environments to have healthy and sustainable food as the easy choice, and shifting to agroecology. So that was number one. The second was really to commit to zero pollution Europe by 2035. So reducing air pollution. And I know that the air quality directives are also up for discussion at the moment at European level. So this is very much important, but we also see there's a huge intersection there with chemical pollution as well. The third is very much a structural recommendation. So actually transitioning towards a wellbeing economy by departing from the failed approach of green growth, because we still see how the European Green Deal is very much underpinned by a growth strategy. So we're looking at how we can move beyond that on a structural basis. The fourth is around circularity. So transitioning to a real circular economy with more durable, repairable and reusable products and waste generation. The fifth that came out was having 100% renewable economy and investment certainty. And this is all around raising ambitions for emissions reductions targets for 2030, but also for 2040, which is something that there has been a lot of debate around for now. And then the final one, which I want to add, is on resolving our nature and our biodiversity crisis by protecting and restoring nature. So making sure that this nature restoration law stays strong and that we can put, for our biodiversity into a state on a path of recovery through implementing the EU's biodiversity strategy. So that's a little bit the details there. So I encourage you to have a look at the policy brief, and happy to add or expand on any of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was quite a substantial input and very interesting, and makes curious for the policy brief that you just came out with. And for the two of you, I saw it in Clara's slide on the Spain case. There is, you mentioned then this public participation is to be enhanced. So all these policy recommendations we, of course, not only that's our whole idea, that it is on the one side directed to policymakers, but on the other side, we always want to organize citizen deliberations to get this engagement, willingness, and see the obstacles and limits across the whole of population. So how far do you think in this this direction? I mean, Jeff, you anyway in Real Deal, but in general, I mean, first to Clara.
I'm sorry, Inge, I was answering a question from the Q&A about the, I'm sorry, would you mind repeating the
Never mind. We can also talk about this later, and we go the round and have then a discussion on this on the link actually between the environment and Green Deal side and the democracy deliberation side. I would, with that, first invite Getan Ricaniul. I already introduced you from the Commission and on the Secretariat of the Conference on the Future of Europe, and with this also being in charge or having been the main person or a key person for the EU citizen panels, which followed the Conference on the Future of Europe and were conducted last winter, I think between September and April, in a quite impressive short preparation and concerted action, I would say. And so I would, not everybody here, I mean, few people will have followed it, but if you could share a bit some impressions, highlights of experience, what went different, better than in the conference in terms of participation, conduction, lessons learned on topics. I mean, you know, we are here we are dealing with the Green Deal topics per definition. There was one of your three topics was close to that, maybe a particular insight from that. And also just what are the future plans with these panels? Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ingeborg, and I really apologize for arriving late. I had a bit of a delay in moving around. Sorry about that. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting us here and have a chance to exchange with you on this. You are obviously linking the deliberative democracy reflection to a specific topic, which I cannot do here because we are by definition applying it potentially to all the topics the EU is dealing with, and more particularly the Commission at the moment. But perhaps I should, for those who haven't followed that as closely as we have, remind everyone that there was a game changer moment. I think we can call it like that now with some distance, which was the Conference on the Future of Europe. Even if, you know, there are many things that we learn and could be criticized, overall, we consider it, given the scale, the ambition, and all the democratic innovation that we tested during that year, we consider the result as a success, and we considered the follow-up to that as a success, because I use the word game changer because I really believe there was a before and after the Conference of Future of Europe. And in particular, it allowed us to prove that democratic innovation that we tested. So just to remind, in the three pillars of the conference, the civic tech instrument that we tested in 24 languages on the platform, the European Citizens Panel, and the random selection at a very large scale, with 4 panels, 800 citizens. And then let's not forget the plenary, which was also very innovative, mixing randomly selected citizens with political representative, NGOs, and of course local authorities as well, etc. So it was, all of it was interesting, and indeed among these innovation, the European Commission decided to, the President of the Commission decided to keep the European Citizens Panel as she put it in the State of the Union speech, a regular feature of her democratic life. And this meant something, this meant first of all, a recognition that it works, and it works at pan-EU level, because I remember when we started the Conference on the Future of Europe, some people told us this will never work, it's not possible, all these languages, etc. We proved that it can work. What is interesting, what has been changed since the Conference on the Future of Europe is that the idea was really to embed the panels in the policymaking process. So I think one of the game changer moment of the Conference of Future of Europe is that there was an attention to follow-up and feedback that I had not seen before. And this was present in the joint declaration. And after that, it was kept as something that we should look at. And it's important, because I've done citizen engagement for a long time, and really this attention to follow up and feedback as being part of the process and not just a nice add-on at the end is something that is an evolution. It's a positive evolution. So these two elements, the fact that we need to embed it in the policymaking process and include in that process the follow-up and the feedback is a positive development that was made possible by the conference, but that was decided by the Commission to keep and to further expand. So indeed, we launched very soon after the Conference on the Future of Europe. In fact, the feedback event of the Conference on the Future of Europe, I think, was the 2nd of December, and the next panel was already right after that, on mid-December. And we, because we want this to be embedded in the policymaking process, the choice of the topic are completely linked to the work program of the European Commission. So we look at the work program, we discuss with services, and we try to see where an input from the citizens could be an added value in the process of policymaking. And this involves a few important factors, which are linked, of course, to resources, having the possibility to do it, but also with time. So it's the relevance of the topic and whether it makes sense to have a citizen input, but also, do we have enough time in the process to make sure that this input is meaningful? And this is really something that we try to use as a criteria when we choose the topic now. So food waste was announced already by the president in her State of the Union speech, but there were two more topics chosen, one on virtual worlds and one on learning mobility. Just to say that these panels are not happening alone. In the European Commission, we are really also trying to use this after conference impulse to create a new ecosystem in the Commission to try to mainstream citizen engagement much more than before. And this takes the form, and it is of course under the radar, but it's quite important. We have now a place, an inter-service group in the Commission where we deal with that and try to make all the action consistent. And this includes, for example, the drafting of a corporate guidebook, thanks also to the help of the GRC colleagues, as Angela is with us today, where we try to put together the different formats that the services can use to do citizen engagement in the policymaking process. So the panels, of course, but also other formats which may be a bit less resource intensive, let's say, and then that can be also used by the different services. So it was very much a pilot phase as well, because even though we got a lot of inspiration and impulse from the Conference on the Future of Europe, we also had to invent a new model, which was, what does it mean exactly to embed that in our policymaking process as European Commission, as one institution? And so we created, if you want, we decided to have what we call now a citizens report, which is actually the list of recommendations coming from the panel with the first analysis of the Commission that is now annexed to the proposal when it goes to the college. And as it is a staff working document, for those who know a bit the jargon, this also means that this will go to the Parliament and the Council during the legislative process. So they will have also the citizen recommendations and their analysis by the Commission while they legislate. And of course, it's not only that. The panel is done by the services drafting the proposal, preparing it. So while they are listening in and looking at the recommendation, this also inspires, of course, the drafting. And if you look at the communication on virtual words, or the one that is coming out today, actually, on learning mobility, which is a recommendation to the member state, you will see that the citizens panel is mentioned many times and the recommendations are used in the drafting. So it's a new model. It's really something that we try to embed in our routine, if you want, of policymaking in the Commission. It's a positive development. The idea now is that we will have every year, let's say 2 to 4 key initiatives being prepared thanks to a citizens panel. For those who are not familiar with the word panel, it is a word that equates assembly, because it is definitely the same format and the same model, and random selection, facilitation, a few weekends of deliberation. This is the main idea. And so every year we will have a few citizens panel to prepare key initiatives. 2024 is a bit specific because it's a transition year, we have an election, so most probably there will be at least one before the election and then maybe others later. So that's where we are with the European Citizens Panel. What else should I say about this? Maybe one last thing. I think because we were in the pilot phase, we could not, and as you rightly said, Ingeborg, we had to do that in quite a rush phase again. We put most of our attention in making sure it happens well and good condition, and that also we push for this larger culture change inside the Commission, because as you know, the conference was a 3-institution endeavor. Not all civil servants in the Commission were involved, so we also had to transfer a bit of the knowledge that was created thanks to the conference, which we concentrated on that. Now we really believe that with the conference and with this model, which is more embedded in the policy making and also more policy focused, because this is something I didn't mention, but of course it's one of the learning from the conference, that the subject cannot be too vast. We knew that, but this was the way it was conceived. So more policy focused. We know that it's working, but now, so we need to concentrate also on making them more visible. So because we also believe that to be a truly democratic tool, they cannot remain in a bubble with only the participants and the citizens selected who know about it. So we want now to reach a phase where we will spend more time and more resources on communication, making sure that the panel can also trigger a wider debate in society and not just between the citizens participating in the panel. And this is why we will also launch a new citizens platform, which is will very much be inspired by the one of the conference in the future of Europe, where we hope also to connect these panels and other citizen engagement activity with the wider debate. I can come back to that if people are interested to hear more about that, but this is where we are. So basically, just to finish, a game changer moment, which was the conference, The Future of Europe, the decision for each institution to act now in its own sphere of competence, because that's the way it was planned with the conference, The Future of Europe, and therefore the European Commission testing this model embedded in its policymaking process. A pilot phase now hopefully leading to something more institutionalized, even though I'm not using that word, and I can explain why afterwards. And remaining as a truly democratic feature, as was mentioned by the President of the Commission. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Getan. That was a perfect overview and impressions, insights, past, present, future of what has been going on. Of course, I'm looking at it with a lens like, where could then we in these plans plug in a humble Horizon project with a big partnership spread and quite an outreach. So let's maybe we get to that in the course of our 2 hours or tomorrow or later. I can imagine that that the fact that we have overview of a variety of formats in practice and in different countries in one phase, that could be quite useful. So a bit of semi-systematic. It's not kind of one case after the other somewhere by somebody, but so in one package, in a way, I think that could be very useful. But Angela will say more about this. For example, when you said you will have panels and other less resource intensive formats for colleagues also, our experience with less resources, which is the case, might be useful there. I would like to hear still why you say I do not use the term institutionalization, and would then hand to Eve after that with, so do you also saw this as a game changer? And do you also see it that it is not anymore an add-on, and that the choice of topic is well done, or where you see improvement potential? There's always improvement potential, but just from you as having been there very involved, and also, and then topic-wise on the link between Green Deal topics and citizen deliberation, your thoughts just. But first, Getan, on why you're not saying institutionalization.
First, I think there is a bit of a, I mean, I don't see the need. That's the first thing, and also because I don't want people to get confused that you know, we are very slowly managing to convince those on the side of representative democracy that these new these innovative models of more direct and regular citizens' participation in the policymaking process are not a threat to them and their legitimacy. So I think that as soon as you word the word institution, they might feel threatened for a reason that is not necessary at all, because most of the skeptics at the beginning of the conference of the future of Europe were convinced at the end, because they saw the complementarity of the two models of, you know, participation and representation, and how they can reinforce each other. So that would be a first reason why I wouldn't want to confuse the debate. Second, I find the word institutionalization a bit heavy for a process that I don't think we should bureaucratize at all. You know, I think we should try to limit as much as possible the bureaucracy around it, to keep the spontaneity, the dynamic, the innovative character of this. And it has also, behind the word institutionalization, the word permanence. And this is not permanent. Even if you have an assembly, a citizen assembly that is in the frame, that stays in the framework, we will have a rotation of citizens anyway. So it is a new assembly, if you want, anyway. So why do we want to institutionalize it if it's there anyway? And three, I like the word embedded, because it's very real. It's a work that we have been doing with the pilot phase of citizens panels, and this make us look really at, you know, at the core, the technique of policymaking, if you want. I mean, I know it sounds a bit not that important, but you know, the whole argument whether it should be a staff working document or not, because the staff working document goes to the other institutions and not another document, is important, because it makes things real. And sometimes it's very fantastic towards citizenization because we feel we are bringing in a revolution, but the revolution sometimes happens in the details of what we are doing. So I rather concentrate on that and making sure that the recommendation of the citizens have an effective impact rather than using big words and maybe spend 2 years understanding how we institutionalize this, right? It doesn't mean that we should not think of making these things more regular, more permanent, more accessible, more visible, but I don't think we need the word.
I think I'm following you on this. I've always, I'm an institutional person from governance research, and I've always also found this a bit too heavy. We have also come up, what you just said, regular, yeah, but we have also come up with coherent. That might be a quite useful term here. It's actually in the title of this summit. And I had a big discussion with Esther. What could be the connotation of this? And I think we have now played billiard a bit, and it clicks. So, Yves, over to you. Your reflections on what we just heard against the background of your involvement and on the link with citizen deliberation for the European Green Deal.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to this session. And thanks to hello to all the Real Deal community that is present this afternoon, and to the colleagues I had the chance to work with recently and the one I will work with in the near future. So it's I have it's always difficult when you have 10 minutes to summarize everything. So I would like to address 3 different points and maybe one preliminary one. The first point is I would like to come back. So as you said, first, I'm working on that since 98 with Citizens Assembly. So I have quite a memory of how it happened in Europe, in different countries, on the topics connected with the Green Deal. For instance, the first climate assembly that we facilitated at Mission Publique, which is the company that I created in 98, was in 2007. That was the first climate assembly that we led for a French region. So we have quite a memory. So I'm going to look to the past, but also to look to the future with you. So the first thing is when we say that Citizens Assembly on topics connected with the Green Deal is a game changer, what do we mean by that? Why is it a game changer? Basically, it's a game changer because the decision makers dare to invite randomly selected citizens and tell them we have a problem for which we need you. So it's a change of position of the decision makers. Usually, they take their time to convince citizens that what they do is right. Now, it's not the same position anymore. They say, we need you to find new solutions for the problem we have. And so this change radically the connections between the citizens and the decision makers. Of course, there is the problem of the scale at which it happens. And like Gaetan said, there is a need to develop things that will make sure that we can connect what hundreds of citizens say with millions of citizens. This is really a key issue for the coming years. So the game changer, because the decision maker changed their position. The second reason it's a game changer is we stop using instruments from the mid-20th century, which are polls, and which does not generate anything very intelligent. So here, when we create a citizen assembly, we don't invite the people to give their opinion in 3 minutes or in 10 minutes, but we invite them to take days. The program of panels that has been established by the Commission, it it's at least 9 days of meeting for the citizens, 9 days to address a topic. And why is it a game changer? Because for topics connected to the Green Deal or to the planetary boundaries, if we don't take time, we cannot address the topic. The complexity is so high that it's totally stupid to say that I'm going to ask 10 questions through a polls to 20,000 citizens in the world or in Europe or in one country to know what the people want to do. I mean, it's just stupid to do that, because if you don't take the time to enter into the complexity and the systemic approach of what is behind the Green Deal or the future of humanity, you need time. And to have an institutions that decide to use resource and to take time, and it's not only the citizens that are there, but also the civil servants are in the room during the 9 days. And so they listen to what the people say, how the process of deliberation is happening. And this is also why it is a game changer. So we take time, finally, and that's the only way to enter into the complexity. And so this game changer is fundamental, because if we dezoom, we understand, all of us, that we are not in the right direction, and we need to improve the decision-making process to stop this crazy thing where we are going to a disaster for the next generations. So we need to change the democratic game to make sure that we take the right path. And we know today that we don't take the right path. So we need to change the game. And this aspect of the new democracy approach by taking time with ordinary citizens, randomly selected, is a strong signal. I'm already at 4 minutes. I only have the same amount of minutes for the 3 other points. But I want to come back to Clara's speech on the just transition. When you give an equal chance to all citizens of Europe to be selected to be part of a panel, I mean, this is really something that is just. And you don't select the citizens because they are in favor of things for that or that, but they are selected because they are randomly selected. So it creates a big equality in the group. And Gaetan can testify that when we have 150 citizens, 1/3 between 16 and 25 years old, and they meet in their diversity, I mean, it creates something just incredible in terms of quality of the group, because they know that they have been randomly selected, and we trust. It's also, and that will be my last argument, for you imagine that for an institution like the Commission to select randomly citizens is to tell to 450 million citizens, we trust you as you are, and we invite you to join and to advise us on what to do. So it's a very strong political signal, and it's a fantastic answer to the mistrust that is in the society today, and that is fed by social network and so on and so on. So that was my first comment on game changer. The second comment I want to make is that when you invite citizens to address a topic like climate or like economy and so on, citizens don't like to be in silo. And very soon, when they start discussion, they quit the silo because the institutions tend to define the topic as it is organized itself, which is not necessarily the way the problem are in the society. And so when we invite citizens to talk about climate, they very quickly talk about water, then they talk about biodiversity, then they talk about pollutions, invisible pollutions, then they talk about, and it's very surprising to see that when you give the space for citizens to address a topic, in fact, they include intuitively the planetary boundaries. And it's very important because it's this model of planetary boundaries is a systemic approach of the life support system of humanity. And intuitively, the citizens, they don't use the word planetary boundaries, but they address it like that. So I really think that for the future, it's very important to open the gates, if I may say, the windows, the doors, and not to confine the citizen within the topic of climate and CO2 emission or greenhouse gas emission, because we know that it's a topic that we like to talk about because we know what is 1 ton. It's much more difficult to talk about 1 ton of biodiversity or what is happening with water. But it's very important to not to be afraid to include in the process of deliberation the complexity of the living system. And so to adopt the model of the planetary boundaries and its systemic approach within the deliberation. There is, and that's my third point, there is one elephant in the room. So when you talk about the future and the decision to make with ordinary citizens, there is a topic that they address very quickly and that is difficult for the institutions. I'm not talking about the Commission specifically. I'm talking about a city, about a region, about a government. It's the same. It's the economy. And I mean, the citizens understand that if you don't transform the economy, you're not going to find the right path for the future of humanity. And this is, for me, one problem to be addressed in the future of the deliberative approach, because if we want to find the right direction to solve the problem, we need to put the economy in the forefront. Because if we don't do that and we keep the economy aside, we will fundamentally not change what is causing the problem today, which is one way to envisage the economy going faster, always faster, and in the direction of making more and more money and making more money, not per year, but per month, per week, per day, per minute, per second, with the model that are used by some companies. So we need to find ways to address economy. And that's, for me, one stake. And for the Green Deal, it's very important not only to include the different dimensions of the planetary boundaries, but also to talk about the economy and its evolution, and not to be afraid by economical actors that will threat the government by saying, if you do that, we will kill employment and so on, because that's what happens, in fact. When the Climate Assembly in France did recommend to stop the planes for flights less than 3 hours, the next day, airlines were knocking at the door of ministers saying, if we do that, we fire people the next day. So it's difficult for the government to resist to that kind of attitude from the economy. And so having assemblies, putting that in the light and saying we want to avoid this and we want to reconsider the economy together, because if we do not, we will not find the right way to address the objective of the Green Deal. Then if we do that, then we may find a solution. But we need to change the game. There are a lot of influencers in the near the governments that are using that threat for any bold decision that are being considered. I gave you an example, but I could take 20 more examples after the Climate Assembly in France. And it's very important to be robust. And the best way to be robust is to be robust with the citizens and to engage them, not by consider that they are market, but consider them as partners to the decision making. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yves. Very impressive. I can already say we will not make a little break, but we'll hang on. Directly to this, I'm the more happy that you are on our advisory board and will be more strongly involved in the future. We are preparing 2+2 cases on economic policies, 2 on the European semester in 2 countries, and 2 more where we will have interactive modeling. So both specific cases and both 2 attempts to move in to do exactly what you just called for. I was also I had just a little reaction on the game changer point. And this making the time is, of course, that's a notorious problem, like for both sides. And also to get the unusual suspects to the table. So the whole issue of recruitment, I would be interested to hear from you if you can do this quickly, because time is running. And the other, where I would be interested to hear from you, is about the link between the citizen panel, citizen deliberation format, and stakeholders. So far there had been stakeholders as experts actually input, but or they were institutionally on a plenary or so. Were a member of a panel. So just in case you have some new idea here, because I mean, we are working on this, and we'll be delighted if we can further down the way sound with you. You can make up your mind. There's a question also in the chat to Clara. I think Clara wanted to address that from Else about realizing Solidar's recommendations to realize a global just transition, and how you see the role of the EU in achieving a global just transition. Okay, that's a wide and policy question. Keep it short,
Okay.
because that can be another
Of
seminar.
course.
Sure, I'll try to end. Sorry, Yves, go ahead.
No, sorry, Clara. I wanted just to, you allow me for the usual suspects. The first thing is that
okay.
if I come back to that, the way to have usual suspect is to use the recommendation of GRC, which published fantastic framework document for decision making. And please don't consider that kind of assemblies as an intellectual place where only science and facts has their needs to be addressed. It's very important to work with emotions. It's important to understand that in Europe, 30% of the population is not at ease with new technologies, and that we still have probably 20% of the population that is not at ease with written language. So there is a need to really be fully inclusive and to be just, if I can apply the Clara criteria within an assembly, to be just, because everyone will have a place and will feel comfortable on board of it. And that's very important to have that. The other thing about the stakeholders is that I think that the one of the best way to increase the power of a citizen assembly is to do what the European institution did after the 4 panels and the national consultation on the Conference of the Future of Europe. You remember, and Gaetan talked about that, it's the plenary process. So the 300 decision makers had to work with the production of the citizens and transform that into final recommendations. And they had to use the say of the citizens to produce recommendation. And for me, in the future, it's one very important evolution of assemblies, not to consider that it's a citizen silo, but it's a process engaging the decision makers in processes like secondary deliberations, like we had in the plenary approach. And it's very important to see that if we don't do that, we will have the spectators and the actors being the citizens and the spectators, the decision makers, including civil society. And we need to find ways to include and to be fully inclusive in a secondary process, like what was fantastically done by the European institutions. So these are my answers to your 2 questions, Inge. And now, Clara, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. Inge, do you allow me very briefly?
Yeah, I would now, as Yves went first, I would ask Gaetan if she has a comment on the same issues, and just with this big praise on the Commission, and just your take on the unusual suspects and the stakeholders.
So on you mean how to be inclusive in the I mean, I think first of all, the need is to pay a very specific and deep attention to the actual selection that is being made, because this is usually made by polling institute, so we shouldn't say just do it. Basically, it's a process of we watch the screener with them. We make sure that the questions are drafted in a way that do not exclude anyone. So, for example, if somebody says that they cannot travel because of a handicap, or that they're not good in technology, that we always have an answer to say no problem. We find solutions. So this is a first element, and I think we try to make the panel very good by applying 5 criteria very well. And normally, if you apply these 5 criteria very well, including the socioeconomic background, the level of education, etc., you should have an inclusive group. That's what we do. We do not add layers and layers of criteria because we want these 5 criteria to be very well applied, and also to have a system where if you have cancellations, it's replaced by the right person quickly, etc., to be agile. So that's what we do. And for the stakeholders, I don't remember exactly what was your question. Sorry. How to mix? Is that what you mean? Or
yeah, exactly. I think so. From what I've seen, or what we have also analyzed in the documentation, and is that stakeholders are members in plenaries, as Yves just said, kind of next to policymakers, and or they are experts in the panel, like, I mean, real experts, academics or so. But I think that's still not. I see there. We all see there room for improvement, and there's experiments like a real process with the stakeholder group and the citizen group, and a iterative process through that. We will test some combinations of that we really have different formats for stakeholders and citizens. I was just thinking whether this stakeholder citizens issue has also come up for you, and you say earmark this for something, we need to develop this further, or this is for so far not an issue for you.
No, we have definitely, and it's part of the guidebook. Actually, we have it as a cross-cutting issues that you need to reflect on before you start a process. I'm not saying we've found the magic solution until now, but we list a series of things that people need to think about when they do that, including indeed allowing observers, making NGO part of the knowledge committee, making sure that the diversity of views are indeed expressed in the panels. We are thinking of other possibilities. Maybe a group of friends of the panels in civil society or something like that, or ideas floating basically at the moment, nothing really there. RTD proposed a model in the guidebook that is mixing the two, that they have already tested. So we put it there as an idea. So don't think we have the magic bullet, but we are definitely thinking that it's important not to oppose any kind of legitimacy between the direct citizen assembly on the one hand and the civil dialogue on the other. We should really find synergies between the two.
Yes, that's what we are also trying. So let's keep in touch about this and other foci we have in our project, and how to make this synergetic with your way ahead. I would give Clara the floor for this little question on the EU in achieving global trust transition, and then we will move to Ulrike. I'll say that again when we move to Ulrike. Clara.
Great. Thank you so much, Inge. Let me allow to jump on the topic of the global just transition after talking about citizens' participation. It's actually great timing because we're going to launch at Solidar our policy paper named A Global Green Deal. So I'll briefly detail what do we mention and what do we mean by global just transition at Solidar, but I would invite you to follow us and our activities if you want to know more, and I will also share some resources in the chat. So according to us, a global just transition needs to be based on a few principles that are already enshrined in international law. These three are the human rights-based approach, and it's about enforcing and respecting human rights, but it's also about the polluter-payer principle and the do no harm principle. And in this global just transition, I think the most important is that the EU needs to be a coherent leader that promotes international solidarity. And here, I think there's two sides of the question. The first one is, what about the external dimension of the EU climate policy, the external dimension of the European Green Deal? And then it's about the just transition for the global south. So having more a global south focused angle and having more of a EU focused angle. For the EU focused angle, I'll just give a few measures, but I'll be very happy to detail further afterwards. So first of all, it's about having policy coherence at the European level, especially in terms of trade policy towards third countries. So it's about making sure that each partnership that the EU concludes with third parties provides quality jobs and ensures social protection systems. But then it's also about transforming the EU from within, so it stops exploiting the resources that it does not have, right? So it's about working on energy efficiency, energy sufficiency, and paying attention to our own consumption, so we don't take the resources from elsewhere. And then it's also about reforming international financial institutions, because for now, developing countries do not have the fiscal and financial capacity to invest in the green transition. And this is tied, yes, I'm finishing, Inge. And this is tied to the financial institutions. And finally, as I was saying, it's about achieving mutually beneficial partnerships that foster sustainable development with third countries. Now, what does it mean in just transition for the global south? It needs to be people-centered, and it needs to foster alliances between civil society and trade unions in order to promote decent jobs for a green economy. It's a very wide question. I'll put some resources in the chat, and thank you so much.
Okay, excellent. Here we're back at the economy, obviously, in the global perspective. And Eve, I'm looking forward to work with you on that and on the rest on getting all our experiences together. And with that, I hand over to Ulrike from the European University Institute, Ulrike Liebert, Professor Emeritus from the University of Bremen, and back to her old home in Florence. And she is heavily involved in the initiative called Democratic Odyssey, which is also aiming at a permanent, we don't say institutionalization anymore, a permanent EU citizen assembly at EU level. And also it's also activities on putting together a knowledge base with different modules, and where we also want to join forces, and we will see then how this fits in or can plug in to Angela's big one-stop shop. Over to you, Ulrike.
Yeah, thank you so much, Inge. Now, my first question is the same as you put this morning. Do you see I'm sharing the screen. Do you see it? No? Hello?
Not yet.
No.
Not yet? Not yet. What is happening? Sorry about that.
I don't have a tip. Esther, you often have good tips for IT handling.
If you select the screen, maybe click it again. Maybe that helps.
Click it again. Yeah, that's it. Now I have.
See.
Now you see it, right?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
But something moved apparently.
Something moved. It's-
But
so
I
can
don't
you-
see that Ulrike is co-host actually, so I'm not sure if she can. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
maybe that's the problem. But anyhow, I can also do without the PowerPoint. I thought
Yeah.
I keep
And
in
can you
mind-
maybe email it to me, and then I send it to Stephen, and then we'll see how it can come in.
That's a good
Okay.
idea. Yes, okay. So let me start and thanking you to invite me to this really excellent and exciting discussion. Thanks to the Real Deal consortium or group and all contributors and the coordinators, of course. As a board member, I was happy to follow over the past year or so what you have been doing, but this is really now amazing how you bring results and the future, your future roadmap together. Now my mission here is also to try to find synergies. This is something as a member of the Odyssey, Democratic Odyssey team at the EUI, European University Institute in Florence. We have been involved as observers first, and then in dialogue in our democracy forum with the organizers, coordinators, the spirits behind and on the scene of the COFI, of the Conference on the Future of Europe, in particular the citizens panels. And one of these citizens panels eventually then took also place in Florence, in the premises of the EUI. So, and this was so inspiring. It was game-changing in the sense of how Gaetan has rightly put this out. And it was also game-changing for, I would say, academia, for research, democracy research. This is a discipline, a field in which I have been working and teaching and researching for pretty much of my professional time. And so we have been keen on observing and also learning from the experiences you made, we made in the framework of COFI with the citizens panels. And there are several really path-breaking innovations. For example, bringing together randomly selected, stratified, randomly selected citizens with representatives, have them discuss in working groups, in plenary. And for me, as a teacher, with my pedagogic view, it was amazing to see the learning curve of citizens. How they became knowledgeable, how they developed trust and developed also the courage to speak up, which is not easy with professional politicians, of course. And we saw this at the end also last year in the feedback event, which you organized on behalf of the Commission, and then also the EP, and finally also the Council took part. And this was also amazing how the citizens performed, many of the citizens, not only the ambassadors, but many others. So, and behind this background, against this background, we have been starting to develop a project where we said this is something which is not going to vanish. These are experiences which, in some way or another, theoretically, empirically, politically, they might stay and they might prove effective and legitimate, maybe not today and maybe not in a year's time, but maybe in 10 years' time. And in academia, we have a longer time frame. So we envisaged this project and found also donors who are investing into this perspective, because after all, citizens assemblies, citizens panels, even transnational ones, global ones, they are not anymore an exception. There are quite a few, there are hundreds and maybe thousands, and even in countries where we wouldn't expect them. Even as a comparative political scientist, I find this very intriguing to see also China has them. It's a local level, regional level, for example. But anyhow, we are in Europe, and rightly, Clara, she reminded us we should also look beyond the confines of Europe, reverse the gaze, as the director, the head of this democratic odyssey, our project, Calypso Nikolaidis, likes to term it, reversing the gaze, learning also, not only exchanging, not only exporting European designs, democracy designs and principles, but also learning from abroad. So what is the Democratic Odyssey about? Let me summarize it in a few points. And if you go to the website on the EUI website, you will find more details. Democratic innovations, this journey, it's a journey with many challenges and obstacles and creativity needed to overcome them, to cope with them, to get democratic innovations on the ground, to prepare for hotter times. To prepare for hotter times in the sense that Real Deal would interpret it in terms of climate change, the Green Deal, in terms, but more broader terms, antagonistic politics, which is with us. And Clara Solidar has pointed out how cumbersome, how serious these conflicts, inequalities, and the polarization and politicization of the European Green Deal has become over the past years. We see this everywhere where the extreme right, the populist right gain ground against the green, those political forces supporting the green transitions in the various policy fields. So, but I would also say democratic innovations and citizens' assemblies, randomly selected, stratified citizens' assemblies, they are a means for coping with intractable conflict. Intractable conflict not only in the domain of climate change, but also of security, defense, war and peace, and any future crisis, emergencies, which we had quite a bit over the last years. Well, our approach, the Democratic Odyssey approach, differs in some respects from the precedent which Kofi has set. The first is it's a decentralized enterprise, collaborative and transparent, of crowdsourcing and co-creating with partners, with activists, with academics, with experts, an endeavor to co-create a design, proofs of concept, which ultimately seek to institutionalize, yes, the non-word, institutionalize people's assemblies as a participant within a participatory ecosystem in Europe. Embedding assemblies. This is one of the, of course, the COFI, the European Citizens Panels have been embedded in the sense that they were steered interinstitutionally by the 3 EU institutions. Insofar they have been embedded, but one of the missing links, which or modules, as we would call it, would be the lack of a compass, which would have been publicized ahead of time about an institutional follow-up. The institutional follow-up was something which quite reluctantly came about, but citizens didn't have a clue after the last meeting of the citizens of the COFI. the platform was not anymore reachable. Citizens could not exchange among each other. And so it was quite difficult. It was cumbersome. Then, of course, there were some events, but with the Commission being very active, and also the Parliament to some extent in a different way, but a lack of coordination maybe, which citizens perceive with respect to how the three main institutions came across in terms of institutional, let's say, follow-up, institutional follow-up, in which which would have created expectations or corrected excessive expectations ahead of time, and which on the other side could have also created something which was dearly missing, an interest by the maxi publics, by the wider publics, by the press, by the media, social media, as well as mass media, conventional. So this is one of the shortcomings which we want to address head on from the beginning on, defining our project, or let's say having designed our project at the same time, not only as a research and as a testing exercise, but as a campaign. We are campaigning, we are creating, and we have created already quite a sizable constituent network, as we call it, with different organizations, institutions, experts, and also citizens, veteran citizens, to bring together and to really create a collective knowledge base for how to go about for a European People's Assembly, or a People's Assembly for Europe over the next years. So decentralized, collaborative, and transparent, radical transparency and radical openness are the two basic principles of our endeavor. Who we are, yes, the EUI's STG's, School of Transnational Governance, is hosting this project. And the growing consortium of partner institutions includes the Berggruen Institute, Particip Action, European Alternatives, Mission Publique, and many others, which I won't bore you with. You can read it on the website. How we do it, we have created, and also looking at all kinds of experiences with citizens' assemblies. We have tried to define the basic modules, a modular approach, a modular framework. And this has been work of a growing group of researchers and practitioners. And now, after we had, at the end of September in Athens, our first going public with the website, with the modular framework, and so on. And this is now a process where the modular framework is opened up to all kinds of knowledgeable and interested people and organizations which are joining us. And we are discussing bi-weekly one module after the other and developing them. So this is a living document, which is now by more than 100 pages, and it will be more. And this is based on a knowledge hub, which is based on Zotero and collects the available publications, also not only in Europe, but abroad. Okay, to guide the design of transnational assemblies in general, and specifically our first building block will be the People's Assembly for Europe, to meet in September next year in Athens again. We envisage 3 project phases. We are now still in the first. The preparatory, building the diverse, a very diverse constituent network. Second, engaging stakeholders and partners. And third, co-designing a comprehensive sortition process and agenda for this Athens assembly. Then the second phase is running the assembly, implementing a pedagogy of random sortition. This has to do with the fact that we need to be publicly visible and attractive also. We need stories, we need visions, we need to convey imaginaries of what random selection, sortition is about. And so we are working on this pedagogy. We will host, then we are working on inclusive structured deliberations, which include also a module, very important, not just framed by rational discourse, but a module on emotions and antagonisms, polarization, whether on climate, whether on war and peace, and are deeply emotional. And if we want to engage ordinary citizens, we need to work and to understand also these dynamics, which are behind the bubbles and the anxiety, the aggressions, and so on, in order to develop common ground, or to enable citizens to learn how to find common ground, to make, topics more complex. It's not either or, black and white. It's about complex emotions, and we need to develop a dimension of understanding, of mutual understanding in our deliberations. Well, and then the third phase is embedding, and embedding our prototype for standing People's Assembly for Europe, to embed it in the EU politics and policies at a multi-level, in a multi-level framework. So from the local to the regional, national, to the EU and global. Enhancing the European public sphere is, of course, very important at all these levels, including also local news media, and ensuring long-term sustainability of these practices, these processes, which will not be made in stone forever. Institutionalization doesn't mean sclerotization. It should mean, in this case, a learning mechanism, a learning institution. And if this is provoking anxieties and confusion, as Gaetan, you have mentioned, then our project is about to explain why this must not be the case, how to clarify what, in this case, in our sense, institutionalization means, permanent means, and that this is complementary and will reinforce democracy and effective policy making, and not the opposite. Well, the embedding, I have said something about the public sphere. The impact is very important if we want to address.
We have to come to an end. We have to come to an end, sorry.
Yes, yeah. We will also make clear from the beginning on what kinds of impacts, and these do not need to be exclusively policy impacts, new legislation or treaty change in the EU. Some changes may be necessary conditions, but this need not be the main impact we aim at. But it's citizen socialization, democratic re-socialization, we can say, and also informing the public about a paradigm change of how to transform our democracy, which after many years has so many flaws, how to renovate it. Well, I have said nearly everything, maybe wrapping it up in one module, which is our module 28. Citizen empowerment is key. Empowerment, not in a zero-sum game. Yes, this is very often framed, political conflict is framed in this way. But we mean by citizen empowerment in the context of citizens' assemblies, we want to experiment and learn from these experiences and reflect on on the dynamics of empowerment. And these dynamics of empowerment have a psychological dimension, as I already said, and looking at the growing proportion of those who don't vote, of the shrinking voter turnout in elections. The next European elections will again be a test case. I think this will be a very, very fruitful context now for bringing our projects, the Democratic Odyssey, on the road. And my very last remark is Democratic Odyssey and Real Deal, our exchange, cooperation, synergies. I haven't focused on that so much because I wanted to present first more what we are doing. The topical focus is quite complementary, as you have also democracy, democratic politics as one of your foci, right? We are also considering several thematic foci for our Athens Assembly, where the climate change topics will be part of these packages. Then we will want to link our transnational case in a multi-layered ecosystem of participation and deliberation. And so your experiences, which we will wrap up in June, will be very, very important for us to take in terms of your toolkits and guidebooks, and also the protocol. And maybe we can also contribute something to your protocol. So, and proofs of concept, I think if we think of sequential testing, you will be testing several of your hypotheses, of your models, focusing on rational discourse, on experts, on stakeholders. We will be focusing more on also on these, include these, but also focus on citizens. So there will be a focus on different modules, but overall there is a mutual synergy, which I see between our both test cases, proofs of concepts, which will certainly help to correct expectations, misleading expectations in part, misleading expectations that, for example, citizens' assemblies and the planetary boundaries are in contradiction to each other. I think we have good reasons to expect that we can prove that this is not the case. But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Ulrike. Sorry, I had to really push a bit because we are now at least something like 10 minutes behind, and I want to give enough time to Angela and Laurence. By the way, Laurence, nice that you joined meanwhile. And yes, and Calypso will be there tomorrow in our rolling up the sleeves session on the protocol. So that will be very useful with this richness of your design and the manifold of synergies, most notably, yes, the multi-level embeddedness and thematic. I hope this will manage, we will succeed, that you will also have a green transition topic in Athens. We do not do democratic policies as topic. It's our framework. And another lesson, for now you're discussing one module after the other. That is, of course, a space for all of us who are working on this protocol to join. I think that will be a very rich experience. And the link for me to Angela is now, I will urgently want to give the floor to Angela, is your work on the Knowledge Hub. And I imagine that this is something Angela has really started off and has set up also quite well in this competence center. And we are very keen to hear more about it and how you imagine then to plug in such other initiatives and activities, our projects, the Democratic Odysseys and others, what your approach to that is. Not thank you. The floor is yours. Sorry.
Thank you, Ingeborg, and thank you to all of you to invite us here as Competence Center. I will try to be very brief and leave for questions. So indeed, so at the Joint Research Center, we have this type of identity that we call competence centers, and I lead a competence center on participatory and deliberative democracy, which was launched in 2021, but it really consolidates 27 years of activities in this field of citizen engagement, which really started with citizen engagement in science and technology, scenario development, and these other, and also policy on many areas. But we only more recently entered into the ideas of deliberative democracy. So our big ambition has been to mainstream participatory exercises and deliberative, for that matter, across all phases of Commission policy cycle where it makes sense. So we talk a lot about design of policy, but there are other phases of the policy cycle where citizen engagement makes sense. For example, in the part of implementation or the part of monitoring and review. So our ambition is really that we have a new culture and a new way of partnering with citizens, and we work at two levels. So we work we work very close with Gaetan and DGCOM on the internal, let's say, the internal culture, but we also work towards the member states. Just for an example, Gaetan already mentioned, we are working on guidelines and guidance on principles and methods on how to implement citizen engagement in policy making. We also contributed to the design of the new platform, the Have Your Say platform. So this, which was also is promised also in the communication of the Commission following the conference on the future of Europe. But more towards the member states, we hope that on the 15th of December, a recommendation on participatory and deliberative democracy will come out under the Defense of Democracy package. So this is something that we have really put our hands on. And again, this recommendation is on principles, on good practices, and so on, in terms of how member states could engage with these deliberative practices in a more normal way of governing. But we are joint research centers. We do a lot of research for policy. So we do science for policy. And in that regard, before that, so we are also developing guidelines to evaluate citizen engagement exercises. And we are working a lot on capacity building. And this connects also to the recommendation that I just mentioned. So capacity building on citizen engagement in member states. And we are at the moment designing a training package for that is really directed to public administrations. So how can they conduct their citizen engagement exercise? This is planned to be released in spring. We already conducted different pilots, but in spring this will be released, spring 2024. Then, as I was saying, in terms of research, so before with Horizon Europe, the Joint Research Center, no longer can partner as in research projects. But we have several ways of doing that, including we are in several advisory boards of projects under Horizon Europe. But we have our own agenda of research. For example, in terms of methods, we very much focus on ideas of, we developed actually these ideas of material and material deliberation and material co-creation methods. And this really links with something that Eve mentioned before of this idea that, you know, engagement is not necessarily just about conversations, and there are many people that can engage in other ways, and does not imply only the verbal. So you need other methods to, and this is a matter also of inclusiveness, okay? Because not everybody can develop reasoned arguments, no matter the time you take with these processes, no? So, and there are other ways of expressing the connection to the issues. So we need to have methods for that as well. We are also doing a lot of research on impacts of citizen engagement exercises. We have a panel of experts that is helping us out with this. We plan to have a report early in 2025. So we started this year, but there is a process going on with this. We are also trying to partner with OECD there. And then I would like also to say that we actually do some research on institutionalization, but and ideas of permanence. But we use this word really to refer to what we want to see, to our ambition of seeing citizen engagement as a new normal of working in institutions, no? And it also connects to the ideas of institutional reflexivity, which I believe it was what Ulrika was hinting at when she was talking about institutionalization. So we are looking really at the conditions for citizen engagement practices in institutions and administrations to flourish and to become more permanent. And not depend on the party, no, that comes in. No, we just witnessed in Barcelona, no, that we thought that, you know, with Decidim and with all the provisions that they have to engage citizens, that this is normal for them. And now a new party came in, and there was a sort of big crisis. But okay, it survived. But the thing is that we don't want to have to put in discussion all the time that citizens should be engaged in policy making. So we need, whether we call it institutionalization or another thing, we need something that doesn't make us start from scratch every time. So we are looking at the conditions to different projects. Then we have another one that I really want to talk about, which is we are doing work on public spaces. We started this work because of a question that at least I have been having a discomfort for a long time, which is on, you know, we create a lot of artificial places to engage citizens. And my question has always been, why don't we go to where people already are engaging? No, and but this question has for me many years since the first portal was put out there, that was called Your Voice in Europe. I think it was back in 1998. So this research that we are doing, actually, then, okay, we have been working with different kinds of institutions like museums and libraries and other types of grassroots let's say places. So the idea of space here is very important. So when we talk about public space, being it physical or virtual, and we are looking at, you know, how everyday democracy develops in this, how people intervene through these public spaces in the building of the democratic project. So it is developing well there, and we hope to have also a science for policy report on that later in 2024. So while I was reading your material, Ingeborg, to the one that you sent me, I think I connected to two of the objectives which were about the engagement of vulnerable people, and then the importance of the local. No, and for us, this has been very, very important in our work. We just published an atlas that is called a biodiversities atlas, where we tell about our experience with engaging citizens in 10 cities in co-creating plans for greening their cities. This was done. This work was done actually during the COVID time, so the green cities and the greening of cities became very, very important thing. But I will share the link in a minute. And there we saw a lot of issues exactly with first the institutionalization. I asked the experts, it's equivalent to 30 seconds, to develop what we called a resistance diary of what problems did they encounter with doing citizen engagement through public administrations. And then the other thing was about the issue of engaging people in vulnerable groups. We have some stories there, but what we see it's very important is the local is very important. Is one size doesn't fit all, and we really need place-based interventions for the Green Deal. So that's our main lessons. I'll put some links in the chat for everybody. So that's it.
Super great. I mean, this is so super rich, and I'm sorry that I have to put on the accelerator pedal here. I hope that everybody can stay maybe 5 minutes on, otherwise we will have a very sharp end. I have still I see that. Very interesting for us that you also look at the member states level, and also what you said, training for public administration. There, our handbook, Stephen was leading on this, could be useful for you, a handbook on legal institutional background in different contexts, at least in the countries where we are working. So that could be very interesting, and vice versa. I'm interested, how is all your work accessible? I mean, this guidebook already seems to be only for the institutions. Is your ongoing research accessible? Do you have a concept for a knowledge hub, or is this organized like a knowledge hub, so that well, like a library or a repository or however, also ongoing? Yeah. And then I would hand over to Laurence. Laurence, are you ready to come in? If not, then we have a bit more time. Laurence, you should get ready, because it is
Do you want me to answer this immediately? So I just posted in the chat our some links, and one of the links is precisely to the community of practice, which is associated to the competence center, and there you have a lot of ongoing projects. You have databases with different citizen engagement projects that is not on ours. You have a lot of resources. There is a newsletter. We have more than 1,000 people registered for that newsletter. So I have put there the link if you want to keep updated. We also have info corners monthly. So if anyone wants to talk to us, just send an email to the functional mailbox that I put there. So yeah, a lot of resources. I hope this answers. And we have an upcoming festival on public participation and deliberative democracy, which is going to happen next year between 12th and 14th of June in Brussels. So there will be also news on that soon.
Yes, that's great. I want to have a technical remark here that Laurence is there. The camera is blocked and we don't hear her. So maybe the technical people can help there, and we use that time for questions and to continue. Maybe also Ulrike has a question to Angela. First, Esther.
Yeah, just to make sure that the attendees also get all the resources that are shared in the chat, because if we share it in the chat, it's now in amongst panelists. But I think Abel and maybe Brooke or Stephen, you can help with sharing that to the attendees as well. I hope.
Yeah, I think we will try to do that. I'm looking to see. I don't see any reason why Laurence cannot speak as a panelist or I just don't see any impediment.
Maybe log out and log in again is always a good idea to do. And if it was only the audio, that would also be turn this off and on again. Often helps, but as both is blocked, it's really odd.
It appears that
okay,
Laurence
she goes off and comes on again. This will then, qua timing, be really, unfortunately, only for those who can stay on a bit. But still nice. Yeah, okay. Then back to Angela, Ulrike, this issue with building a knowledge hub, a database is maybe then is not the easiest to access. You already have to know what you search for, kind of. So this kind of your training modules seem to me very interesting for a way to ahead. So will you also make this accessible? I mean, my original question, how do you get on board other knowledge hubs or knowledge collections as we have? I mean, not that you have to go through all Horizon projects, but I mean, there is just other knowledge out there and not all yours. So I'm interested how you deal with that.
So we actually made the big, we surveyed a lot the internet and the projects and the previous framework programs of research of the Commission. So not just the Horizon 2020. I mean, the science and society programs started with FP4, the framework program 4 of research many years ago. So, and we don't have there, as I said, only our projects. I mean, we have other projects that we serve. We have also a database of organizations that work on citizen engagement. And at the moment, we are actually on the process of updating these databases. We got some stuff to do that. But we have ideas in the future to actually connect to Participedia, for example, and see how we can actually enlarge these databases. But the question is that we actually did the work that you were mentioning. So we surveyed a lot the projects that are out there. So it's not ours own. There is a lot of there are a lot of projects there that we have not been involved in. So yeah, but the idea for me would be to syndicate this database with others that are out there. We will talk also with OECD and see, for example, how we can merge because we have citizen engagement exercises beyond deliberative processes. So we have other types of citizen engagement exercises, and so yeah. don't know if I answered your question, but.
While Laurence is still, sorry, Stephen has a hand up. While Laurence is still trying to get online, I'm pessimistic here. Meanwhile, but what about this guidebook, for example? Because a guidebook is, of course, something we are now also moving. We are moving into this direction with our protocol. So that would be super useful to have. And Stephen, you had a question as well.
Well, I wanted to say that it seems now that the attendees should be able to access the chat and could look at all the different links that were posted there. So I believe that is now active. That's one thing. And Laurence is, although it looks like Laurence is not muted, so we cannot hear her. So not sure what is the problem there.
Ketan, do you want to talk about the guidebook?
Yes, please.
You can go ahead if you want, but it's in very short, it's a project that accompanied the idea of a project team inside the Commission. So it's basically getting together the services to talk about citizen engagement and trying to have a more consistent approach across the Commission. So not only in terms of making sure the methodology are used in a rigorous way and with a link between the objective and the method that you choose, but also that this has different impact on follow-up and feedback towards the citizens than the usual consultations that the Commission does. So going one step beyond in terms also of impact on policy making. I don't know if you want to say more, Angela.
No, I think you said it all.
Yeah, to make it short, it is an internal thing. It was produced for your work endeavors to get this change, this culture internally. But I assume it will have a lot of elements that will then be used also in training, in as Angela said, training to member states. So this is really super valuable stuff, and particularly for us when we are working on guidelines, recommendations, toolkits, this with our focus on this citizen deliberation for the European Green Deal, but there's of course a huge overlap. So it would be great to exchange whatever is possible. Internal is internal, but just have a thought what can be exchanged there, so that we don't do double work and that we can make something most useful and complementary. Yeah, that's just then maybe a plea from us, and whoever could be there tomorrow is welcomed, or we link later. And for the festival, that's very much on our screen, Angela, your festival in June, because we have this summit, so a similar meeting like today, but in person in Budapest. After all our empirical cases, all our test cases, that will be end of June then next year. So, and there we had your dates on mind, and do not conflict with it. We will be later, something to 1 or 2 weeks later. Laurence, can you say something? And if
do you hear me now?
Yes. Now we hear you.
Okay.
Finally.
I've been changing offices and computers, so it seems to be working
that's also
better. Now I start
Yeah.
the video, but doesn't seem to work that well.
Okay.
Okay.
We are over time. We made a bit use of the time while you were trying to solve your technical problems, but in order to now we also see
Yes.
you. This is
Wow.
marvelous. Okay, so we all stay
Incredible.
on, whoever can stay on and get your input about the European Climate Pact and what are the experience and plans. And Stephen, before you do this, Stephen has his hand up.
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody, because some people will be leaving because probably they had it on their schedule that we would be finishing now. So I just want to remind everyone about tomorrow's session from 10 to 12. And I put it up now to share my screen, scoping the structure and framework of the Real Deal Guidance and Toolkit. So tomorrow is our real working meeting. And I hope as many people as possible who are on this call will be willing to join us tomorrow for this as well. And it's the same link that you're using today. You just use the same link and you will sign in tomorrow to session number 3. Okay, and now I will be stepping out, and as far as I'm concerned, we can continue as long as we want. I believe we have the time reserved for another 30 minutes at least. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I mean, I would aim at not to stretch our time. We didn't even have a break, and let's aim at finishing at 1:15. And that gives +2, and that gives Laurence some minutes to tell us about the European Climate Pact.
Yes, thanks, and thanks for the invitation. Actually, yes, I will start with the Climate Pact and perhaps broaden the concept a bit further.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
So I think you remember that at the very beginning of this commission, our president came up with the idea of the Green Deal. At the same time, in parallel, she also came up with the idea of a climate pact. And the idea was precisely that in order for the transition to come and for the transition to be embraced by everybody, and we really need everybody on board, we need to talk to stakeholders, we need to talk to local actors, we need to talk to citizens. Along the way, convince them to inform them about climate change, of course, convince them to act, to do whatever they can do at their own level, and to do also some advocacy, because more needs to be done at local, regional, national level. So it was the three sort of purposes, and that's what we very much had in mind since the very beginning of this commission. I'm saying that because I think it's important for you to realize that it was at the heart of what the commission had in mind, and linked to this very much also the need to support citizens' participation a bit at different levels. So at local, regional, national level, wherever this is needed. And that's what we've been trying to inject, not only in the Climate Pact, talking to stakeholders, but also in the various initiatives that we have, where we try to support action by, for instance, local stakeholders. If you look at the Covenant of Mayors, if you look at the Smart and Sustainable City Mission or the Adaptation Mission coming from Horizon 2020, at the heart of their operations and their activities, we are also having a mandatory sort of citizens' participation angle, because we believe that this cannot take place without citizens' participation. So I think it's very much there on our side, and we're trying to discuss that with national authorities, with regional authorities, and trying to to encourage them to do so. Now it's more than ever necessary. Because we are reaching a very, very crucial phase of the Green Deal. Citizens and local actors have started working on the Green Deal as soon as it was put forward by the president at the very beginning. But now the Green Deal legislation is sealed in Brussels, so to say. So the legislative framework is done politically, and it's a massive one, quite unprecedented. And now it needs to be implemented at national level. The Commission has a lot of implementation work to do as well on what is fully harmonized, but a lot remains on the side of member states. And for them to be successful, they will necessarily have to work very closely with citizens and local and regional actors. For instance, just to give you an example, 80% of greenhouse gas emissions in the EU originate in cities. If we don't have cities on board, we will not achieve the Green Deal. It's as simple as that. So we are working very, very closely with member states. As you know, we have this under the governance regulation, the process for national energy and climate plans. In this regulation, there is also a provision whereby member states have to consult local and regional actors. So we are at the moment reviewing these draft plans, trying to see whether and to what extent member states have been interacting with the local and regional actors, and we will see whether we need to strengthen that along the way to make it happen better in a more effective manner. But in that spirit, of course, citizens' participation comes in, and it should be part of the governance that member states are putting in place to prepare their plans and then to implement their plans. I think at this juncture, you know, from our side, on top of the objectives we're pursuing, we are very much convinced that if citizens are not on board, we will not get there. That fairness is really at the heart of what we would like to achieve. And if the fairness is not anticipated, considering the impacts the package and the Green Deal will have on certain, you know, vulnerable groups, I think it may backlash a big way. And I'm not going to make the link with the political context, which is getting a bit difficult here in Brussels and in a number of member states. But obviously, this could play a very, very negative role. So I think fairness is really at the heart, and participatory processes could really help, you know, address these concerns and try to find solutions in addressing the concerns in relation to fairness. Now, I think on our side, we're all and trying our best to support participatory processes from a personal standpoint, and because I'm French, perhaps. I would just like to caution one thing. You know, in France, we've had this Convention citoyenne pour le climat, which was quite, you know, well thought through, well organized, with quite a huge number of citizens taking part in it, being trained, you know, getting the expertise they needed to reflect and to come up to recommendations. And then it was, by and large, a bit put aside. So, I mean, people make the effort to come on board and to contribute, and then this is being sort of, at least that's their perception, largely disregarded. And I would think that when we push for such processes, and again, we're all heartily supportive of that, we have to make sure that these are properly managed and that, you know, the policymakers afterwards are sufficiently responsive to what comes out of it, because it can be a wonderful tool for, you know, reinforcing democratic processes, but it can also become problematic and undermine local democracy if this is not taken sufficiently seriously. So it's just because I had very much that in mind when interacting with citizens as part of the Climate Pact. And I think we need to, I think everybody around the table, probably you had discussions around that, needs to reflect on that as well. Under the Climate Pact, we're now starting a new phase. As you can imagine, we're trying to we have a group of climate ambassadors who are trying their best to push the case in member states. We're also relying very much on existing networks, be it at European or national level, because, you know, we can't do it all from Brussels. And it would even be counterproductive to do it all from Brussels, because, you know, member states are very different. When you look into the regional level, or even more the local level, of course, everybody is different, is pretty unique. So I think you have to have tailor-made solutions. But we try to talk and to communicate about, you know, the articulation between what is being done at EU level, the general framework, the enabling environment, and the funding that is attached to it as well, the discussions with member states, and then, you know, how we can work better, member states and local regional level together, to make it happen collectively as EU and at national level. So it's about the multi-layer governance, which I think we still have room for improvement there. It's of course very touchy for a number of member states, because member states, the central authorities, are our traditional interlocutors and will probably remain so. Still, you know, for everybody to succeed, I think we need to dive a bit deeper into what is happening. And also because we need to be responsive to what citizens expect the EU to do. You know, in the first place, they embraced the Green Deal. Now, when it comes to implementation, it's going to be much more touchy. When we talk about, you know, replacing boilers, replacing cars, it's becoming, of course, problematic for quite a number of our citizens. And that's where we need to be creative and to anticipate things. And we should be part of the solution there as well. So I would perhaps leave it there to end your workshop. I think it's going to be enough. And I hope I was not completely, you know, hors sujet compared to what you discussed before.
No, it was perfect. You even hit on buttons that were hit before. So it could have not better confirmed things we had highlighted. I mean, say the first fairness at the heart is just transition. We had an own presentation here, colleagues from Solidar, and that links to economic policies. Yeah, not address. You don't get this without addressing economic policies, was said, and we are doing it in Real Deal with two or four cases. Actually, we are doing it. We will do it in 4 cases addressing economic policies. So that will be interesting. The story with this watch out, caution for the follow-up, and that otherwise it's not even neutral. It might even undermine the whole efforts. That Gaetan has spoken to this, Eve, as well, a lot, also with this then changing the culture, including in public administration. So that's what I found personally, because I have researched there also a lot on Angela's approach in the member states, training for public administrations for changing the culture, and Gaetan changing the culture inside of the Commission, getting to a new normal. That is, I think, very important in order to then also provide for this follow-up, because that I think you only get when you have we move in parallel towards the new culture. And in general, this multi-layer governance, which we also had in our project, we will take this as ambition to as an energizer to do a bit more on this in our cases and in our efforts to link our national cases with the EU level cases, and to have then also meaningful recommendations for that. But in short, there's really a handful of tracks here of highlights mentioned, which we had on our screen, which we with this session here now get reinforced, and we are looking forward to really staying in touch with you on whatever then drafts we have, as I said, to stay complementary and to develop this in a most useful way. We really do not want to be an XYZ Horizon project that is produced for the shelf. We are a very activist consortium with half researchers and practitioners and half civil society organizations. So that is very much at our heart, that something happens with this. And as I also said, Angela, I wrote it to you, we also have a post-project ambition to have a citizen deliberation academy, which have not started to think about it yet, but that would be great to stick the heads together, of course, also with Ulrike, and to make things most complementary and use resources in the most meaningful way. Having said this, from my part, again, this is marvelous. It was a marvelous panel. I'm very grateful for you all. You made it, spend your time, and I hope you also got something out of it with this connection across the spectrum, democracy and European Green Deal. Yves just texted me saying he found the composition very inspiring, bringing all these aspects together. So I'm already happy with this, and I'm happy we stay in touch.
Thank you.
So everyone,
Stephen,
I have
do you have
nothing
a
to say.
last word?
I have nothing to say other than to ask everyone to please participate tomorrow in our third session beginning from 10 a.m. at the same link. I look forward to seeing you all there. I want to thank Inga. This was a very interesting panel discussion. We had a very good attendance. I noticed that we didn't have anyone really dropping off, so that shows that it was a very interesting and fruitful discussion. And again, thanks as well to our panelists and to our attendees and our participants. So hope to see you all tomorrow, and thank you very much.
Bye. Thank
Stay
you.
in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you very much.